On the topic of how to get past trauma in your life, I came across this quote in getting ready for the interview today. It says, "First, we must take a look at the traumatic event and the ensuing patterns and behaviors that have resulted. Once you can see the patterns of thinking and behaving and how negatively these impact your life, choices, and future, you can step by step create a strategy to move in a different, more positive, more spiritual direction." And that is from overcometrauma.com, which is absolutely perfect for today's interview because I have from overcometrauma.com, Theresa Vigarino.
Hi there, Mike. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, Theresa, how's everything going?
It's going great. Starting the new year off with a bang. I'm very
Awesome.
excited to be here.
And
My
we
first live video interview, so this is exciting for me as well.
and it's my first time doing the live editing as we go through. So I'm going to have everything lined up here, and we're going to get through it smoothly. This is just the first week of January 2015,
Yes.
right after Christmas and New Year's that we're getting together. We rescheduled from a earlier date that we had set because I was having some video problems, so I appreciate that flexibility.
Of course, of course.
All right, so that quote that I read goes perfectly to what I talk about on this show, which is that particularly for people who have suffered some kind of emotional trauma, and a lot of times I'm talking about childhood abuse, sexual abuse, bullying,
Hmm.
things like that.
Yeah.
I think your context is a little bit different when you have this written, and we'll hear about that. But I talk to business owners all the time who start businesses because they want the freedom, they want to feel successful and happy and fulfilled, and then they just don't get that, whether they're getting the results or not. And sometimes if they're getting the results they want, they feel worse because they feel like, well, now I definitely should be happy and fulfilled and successful.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I want to hear about your journey to where you are now, but let's start at the end, right? So feelings of
Okay.
success and happiness and fulfillment. I mean, is that where you are now? What do we have to look
You
forward
know, it
to?
really is, Mike. I'm so excited about my life. And if you knew me 10 years ago, you would know I've come a very, very long way. I have such a deep soul level fulfillment in what I'm doing with my business and in helping others achieve the state of being that I now am so joyful about being in this state. And, you know, right now, so I'm writing, I'm doing some speaking, and I'm doing a lot of coaching, and looking forward to facilitating groups. And ultimately, that's my goal, is to, you know, have more events where I'm teaching and I'm taking the stage. And it's just the most rewarding thing I could ever think of doing, is, you know, coming from a background of severe childhood abuse from as early as I can remember in every form, that set me up for a life of picking subconsciously, choosing and picking situations, people, places, environments where I was always having to overcome abuse of some sort, even including working for people that maybe abused me with a lack of respect in the business place. And I was always having to work towards getting myself out of those bad situations, or, you know, negative situations, or situations that I had to play small. I wasn't able to play big. And, you know, obviously it carried over. These things carry over in every area of our life. And so the bottom line is we must go back. Most of us, I would say 99% of us, these things are rooted in our early developmental years. And our life experiences just keep reiterating these patterns in our life. And we finally get to this place where it's like, wow, it looked like I had everything. I thought this was going to make me happy, or I'm tired of being in an unhappy place. What is it that is necessary for me to find that sense of peace, fulfillment, joy, purpose, have those healthy relationships, have that business life I'm looking for? And it does take some work to get there, but it's worth it. It's worth the ride. It's worth the job. It's worth putting the effort into it.
Yeah, I mean, hearing you talk through it, it strikes me every time how powerful that is because I mean, it's basically the same process I think that I went through, and I talk to business owners all the time who will say, I'm frustrated and I have anxiety and I can't charge what I'm worth and I can't get control of my time and control of my money, and yeah, maybe I, you know, had dad hit me or drank or had whatever problem, but I don't see what the connection is. And it's just like that frustration of recreating that. I think you
Yeah.
said unconsciously selecting that over and over again to keep recreating that. It's really frustrating.
It is frustrating. And, that's good. It's really good to get to that stage where you were just so frustrated that you say enough. And that's really what happened in my life. But it was in all areas of my life. I also developed a very debilitating chronic illness. And I had that along with, divorce and trying to find my purpose in life and, looking for reward. And I will tell you that the more we can uncover those layers of the patterns and understanding the way our brain works. I prayed. I went to counseling. I went to shamans, healers, priests, teachers, you name it. I have spent my life trying to get to know myself better, getting to that place of where I really do appreciate who and what I am. Even right now, even when I'm not as successful as I hope to be, it doesn't matter. Even though my health still lingers, my problems still are here with me right now today. I am so at peace with my journey. And I think that that's an important aspect. We all have wounds. We all have patterns to work through. We all have areas of our life that we need to grow and change and evolve. And along the way, we have to appreciate the life that we're given today in this moment, no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what your business life looks like. It's an important part of the process to know that the journey is the destination, and to try not to have that feeling of angst, and just to understand, hey, I'm a work in progress, and I'm forever changing.
Yeah, and you speak about that so well, but you've kind of gone through a lot of that healing, and you've recognized
Yes.
what those connections were.
Yes, definitely.
Do you remember what it was like not to be aware of why that was happening, what that relationship was, why you kept putting yourself in those situations over and over again?
Yes,
Can
I do. And it was, and frustration. I would say I was sad. I would say I was angry. I would say I felt victimized. I felt like my best years were behind me. I felt like I had no purpose in life other than to raise my kids. And that is the most important thing we can do. But me personally, I did not feel like I was ever going to have the life of my dreams. I had given up. And I was really holding on to that. They say when you reach the end of the net, make sure you got a knot in it. That knot was coming undone. I was hoping there was going to be a safety net underneath me, and there was, and there always is. And I can say that the biggest lesson I would love to share with people, that even if you are in that place of severe frustration, depression, hopelessness, helplessness, confusion, that know that it's temporary. It's not going to stay with you forever. There are things you can do and make progress each and every day to have more clarity, to get in touch with yourself, understand the neuroscience of your own mind, and what keeps you trapped.
And what was your life like at that time? Were you in business? Were you an employee? Were you at home?
No,
What did that look like?
I was doing a lot of online courses. I live in Lake Tahoe, so a lot of what I did, because I was also raising children, I had gone through a 10-year divorce that was extremely traumatic for the children and me. And I wasn't willing to travel a long distance to go to college and get any kind of degree. So, because I was a very young mother, I did a lot of online distance learning and courses and certification programs. And so that's what I was doing, knowing that I had to do something, but knowing that my health was a big problem. I had many times in my life where getting out of bed was a very difficult thing for me to do. So I was told I wasn't going to see 40, and I'm 45 now. So, obviously they weren't right. And part of my story is I'm training to climb the face of Half Dome, which I don't know if you know what Half Dome is, but it's a rock face in Yosemite Valley, 23 pitches. I'll spend a couple of 3 nights on the cliff. And for someone that has what I have, that's quite a feat. So I'm here to tell you, you don't have to believe your life is over. And I did at that time. I was told I wasn't going to live. I was going to suffer and die. I didn't believe in myself enough that I could start a business. Are you kidding me? Who was I? I was an abused woman, a divorced woman, a sick woman, a single mom. How could I possibly do anything meaningful with my life? And so one day I said, no. That was the turning point. I just said enough. And I actually yelled at God. I was so angry about life itself, that my life had turned out this way, and I was suffering in every way you could suffer. And I just said, you have got to do something for me. And I don't know if it's so much that God moved mountains for me, or I just pulled my big girl pants on and pulled myself up by my bootstraps. And I said, enough is enough. I am not going to go down like this.
So that's actually, I think, an interesting element. I do a lot of reading about this dynamic of self-protection. I don't know if you're familiar with like Dan Allender and Larry Crabb, but what you said about yelling at God kind of struck a note, because one of the things that I've kind of come to understand is part of the problem with the self-protection is looking to behavior that we can make ourselves happy with. We can protect ourselves. We can uh, force the world to be the way we want it to be so that we can feel
Yeah.
safe and protected and all these things. And so a lot of
Yes.
that anger is, why aren't I safe? What's wrong with the universe the way it is that I have to feel this way? Can you elaborate on that dynamic a little bit?
Well, for me at the moment, I don't know if it was so much that as much as it was, I was so sick to death of the way my life patterns were going that I just said, I'm not going to live like this anymore. And I walked through this illusion of being a victim. I said, we're all going to die someday. I might as well get on about the business of living. And that's when I started making changes. And I'll tell you, I had a little glimmer of hope still, even when I was clenching my fists and I was so mad that my life was the way it was. Um, Not my children, let me just say, the greatest joys of my life, beautiful kids that are doing wonderful things. And I must have been doing something right through all of that muck because they know their mama loves them. There was a little glimmer of hope, and that's what I want to tell people in your business life, in your family life. What matter, our lives are holistic. We're not just business people. We're not just family people. We're community members. We're all of a soul. We have a mission, each and every one of us. And so, if you can just hold on to that little glimmer of hope, even during the dark times, that you can have the life of your dreams. That's what it takes to take that first step. And then, you're moving that momentum each and every day towards your dream, whatever that dream may be.
You make this kind of sound in the retelling like a pretty quick process, that you got to that point, made the decision, and changed things moving. Was it that?
Up to that point was a long time.
Oh, okay.
That was my breaking point. The breaking point happened rather fast. That particular moment, it was like, it was really sudden, and it was this surge of power that I think I had repressed for a really long time, because remember, I had lived in the place of being a victim. And so all of a sudden I said, I'm taking control of this life, the life I have. And now I look at life as a big giant gift. And I look at what I do for a living as a gift. And, what greater gift than how can I be of service to others? And so for your viewers and listeners, I would say that if you are reaching your business success, your financial success, but something's missing, I would say maybe change the framework of how you do your business, which is, the greatest gift and honor of all for our life is to be of service to one another. And when we come from that place of love for humanity and for other people, that changes everything internally. And so externally, our world changes as well.
So what was that like? From what I read from your website about taking a look at the event and then recognizing the patterns and behaviors that came out of that and how they're impacting the results that we're getting today.
Yes.
How did you see that? What?
How did it transpire in my own life?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was an abused child, physically, emotionally, verbally, kicked out of the house at 3 years old, go find a new place to live, kind of, mommy dearest on steroids situation. And I went from that to picking relationships with other abusers, like for a really long time. And I was always having to overcome. In the back of my mind, I believed I did not deserve all the beauty and wonderment of life. And I didn't see it coming ever. Like I said, the people, places, circumstances, situations change, but the feelings will remain the same unless and until we go back. We forgive. Forgive is the difficult topic. We go back, we understand. We go back and we say, now I get it. And you can understand a little bit of the neuroscience. I believed I wasn't worthy. I believed I deserved bad things. I believed I wasn't worthy of a good relationship, that I would be betrayed by every man I ever loved.
And that's
And
not to say consciously you believed those things or you
no,
thought that they were
I did
true,
not believe that.
but
I thought, what the hell is going on each and every time?
How does this keep happening over and over again?
The rug got swept out from under my feet each time. And it seems as if every time something happens, it's almost like it gets worse, exponentially worse to open our eyes. And until we open our eyes, these patterns will continue. Whether it be, maybe you're the bully at work. Maybe you're, a manager that rules by intimidation rather than inspiration because that's the way your father was. Or maybe you're wishy-washy leader and it's hard for you to be a strong, assertive person because of your background. The options are millions, right? They're endless of how our patterns that were set in our mind. It's all neuroscience. Science has proven it that a belief system becomes an anatomical fact. We've got to know what our belief systems are so that then we can do the work. We can know what our triggers are. We can see what our behavior patterns are. We can change the way our mind works. It's all possible, doable. It's not easy, but it's worth the ride. It's worth it.
To knowing what our belief systems are, the first
Yeah,
sign that we have to look at is the results that we're getting in
exactly.
our lives.
Exactly. And when you get to be my age, 45, as I said, I'm very proud to be 45. You can look over your life and you can say, this keeps showing up over and over and over again. You can see what's working in your life and what's not working in your life. And that's where you can take, some stock into the areas that you do want to change. And you've got to want to, you've got to make the decision. That's the first step. I write about that. I write about the decision is the precipice of change. You have to say, I don't really know what's going on. That's what I was saying to myself, but for God's sakes, enough. I'm changing this life. This is not the best life I can have.
Yeah, it's such a perfect outline of kind of how this works. So so you start to see this pattern, you make the decision to move forward, and then everything's better, right? What's that?
Well, yeah,
What's
yes,
that?
of course,
What's
in
that
the
look
perfect
like?
world. Well, what happens is you become aware of the things that trigger you into that mind pattern. So I teach people how to do some exercises where you really take control of your thought process, and you understand that the mind will try to trick you into staying the same, into keeping things the same, because the mind wants safety. The mind's job is to keep us safe, and so to keep us safe, there's no judgment in the mind of whether this is drinking that drink again tonight. That's your mind doesn't care if it's the best idea or good or bad. There's no judgment on it. It's just familiarity is safe to the mind. And so, hey, drink that bottle of scotch tonight again because you had a hard day at the office. That's what you've been doing for 20 years. That must be what you're supposed to be doing. And your mind, even when you say, no, I'm going to stop drinking this year, I'm just picking one. That's my goal. It's not good for my health. My doctor said I've got sleep apnea. My liver's going bad, whatever. I'm cranky in the morning at my secretary. So I'm going to, make some changes. But yet your mind will, when you try to change something, your mind will do everything it can to keep you in that spot. That doing the other thing is an unsafe place because to the mind it is, because it's new and it's different.
And then
And
on
so
top of that, you're now introducing judgment and shame and reinforcing those behaviors and giving yourself
exactly.
more to comfort against.
Yes, exactly. And I tell my clients and my family and my friends and everybody that knows me, because this is the language I speak a lot. I liken it to those cargo ships that we see out on the horizon at the ocean, and they look like they're not moving, right? But yet if you're on that cargo ship, it's moving. And so when we're trying to change a mind pattern that's been set in play for our life, it's like getting one of those things to turn. It creaks and it sounds like it's going to break in half. I would imagine that's what it would sound like. So it's really hard at the turning point. But once you stick with it, and you do the work, you will make that turn and you will be going in the next direction. And I'm telling you, I know it's true because I did it for myself. I mentored under a great man that taught me this. He's a neuroscientist, psychoanalyst, and he handpicked me and I handpicked him, and we worked together, and it changed my life. No matter how
Yeah.
much praying I did, it didn't happen until I understood my own brain.
That's a great analogy about turning a ship.
And it's true.
Ships do not want to turn. They want to go straight. It takes a lot of effort to turn the ship. You have to be very
Everything's
intentional
got to
about
be
it.
working together. And and that's and what I tell people is, I help them with the quantum physics aspects of it, which is, not telling yourself the self-talk, envisioning what you want, lots of different exercises and tools that we use for this, but also faith comes in. I so much in time, no matter what the problems are, it can be work, it could be home, it could be both. So much of it goes back to these patterns that we began as children. And that inner child healing is such an important aspect of this, and it will heal your whole life. That's the beauty of it, the whole life. And we want our whole lives to be healed. We don't want to have a great business life, but your life is in shambles at home. Everything is everything needs balance, and it's a holistic view that I have, that all areas of our life call to be healed. And once you do this work, they all will be healed. That's the good news.
I think that's totally true. I mean, I focus a little bit more on business because I think business kind of forces you to address it. If you're working against yourself like this, you just can't get the results that you want. You're fighting an uphill battle.
True. True.
And, as sad as it is, if you can hold down a job and show up on time and do enough to not get fired, then nobody really cares if you're depressed or anxious or unhappy or drinking every night or whatever. So,
Right.
yeah, obviously these things apply to everybody. I think in business in particular, it really kind of puts a magnifying glass. And it's not a surprise that, we say it all the time. Business is about relationships. You do business with people you know, like, and trust, all these things.
Yes.
But the
Yes.
dynamics, absolutely exactly the same. I'm right on.
And I
Totally
think for
on board with you.
women, for women, because I'm engaged, as you know, and I finally got that right. And so, like I say, it heals in every area of your life. And he and I talk a lot about the difference between men and women. And, for me, I am a bit more of a traditional type of woman. I mean, my family matters first. And so I think there's a difference for men, the typical in the back of the head for the man, they're the provider, and, the business life is their most important expression of their best self, so to speak. And for women, for me personally, and I know a lot of women like this, their highest expression of their self is how they are in their family life. And so I think it also is a gender difference on where it shows up and where it affects you the most. I mean, I agree with what you're saying, that men, you can hide it at work more, but I think women will bring their problems to work and talk to each other in the lunchroom about what's going on in their relationships. So there is a bit of a difference between men and women in that regard, I believe.
So, I mean, that's to say how it manifests itself, but
Yeah.
we'll agree that they're both affected,
Yes. Yes.
even if in different
Yes.
ways.
Yes, I think men can probably hide it a little bit easier than women can, because we're the emotional creatures on the planet, but it doesn't mean that it's not there. And I think what happens to men is they repress it, suppress it. Men aren't supposed to talk about their feelings, or that admit that they were wounded from their childhood. And so they carry this burden with them. And it's a big white elephant in their own life. And there's a lot of denial that goes with it. And unless and until those issues are faced, they'll be with you forever. And that sense of that nagging, that nagging is your soul saying, hey, let's address this so that you can have peace.
Yeah, and you're
Doesn't matter how successful you are if you have no peace in your
sure,
heart.
sure. I mean, you're exactly right. I had to come to it from the side of having suppressed emotion for so long. Step one for me was just figuring out how to even feel anything.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's an important work for all of us. And by the way, there's nothing more important than self-realization, self-actualization, because, to dance in life is a wonderful thing, but the dance with oneself is the greatest dance of all. And that's when you can become the highest expression of who and what you really are, is by that inner work and knowing, wow, I've set up this pattern, all I care about is how much money is in my bank account, but really at the end of the day, it's still empty to me. So, and there's no judgment here, because remember, the journey is the destination. So when you have that attitude of it, you have a lot more, self-compassion. You gain wisdom from all of this. And so ultimately you can be more loving, and it's all a choice, and it's all a decision that you make each and every day.
So are you able to maybe like compare and contrast or summarize the core beliefs from before when you were still kind of unconscious to all this, and then what you've learned to be kind of the truth about your situation now?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. First, like I said, I have a piece about my life and that all is well. Where before I lived in a state of continual fear, because especially if you have child abuse and if you have a lot of physical abuse and there's a lot of, screaming and yelling and you're so used to fear. You're so used to fear that, you don't understand what it's like not to have fear that something bad's going to happen in your life. And that sets up a whole physical response in your body that stays with you, which is really, detrimental to our, homeostasis in our physical bodies, let alone what it does to us emotionally, to be a person that lives their life from a state of fear. Now I don't. I mean, my God, I'm going to go climb Half Dome. I mean, I'm not scared of much anymore, because I know all is well. And so that's one of the biggest things, is that I don't have fear like I did. And I know now, I've had the great gift of one day just my heart opening up for myself, and I understood the beauty of my own life, and I really started looking at myself differently, and that I am an amazing person, and I have lived through so many traumatic things, and I still love life now, and I love people, and I love to give back, and I really look at every day as a gift. And so where before life was just passing me by and I was afraid to do anything and I was so sick and I just, everything was ruling me. And now, I'm in charge of my life and whatever way it goes. So I'm in the driver's seat.
So for somebody who is still in that, and you
Yeah.
coach people on this, right?
Yes, I
Yeah.
do.
So somebody who is starting with that, and they are sick of feeling that way, but
Yeah.
they feel out of control of their money, their time, they feel frustrated, they feel like they're still struggling with that anxiety and depression and all these things. What's the, like, how do they start?
Well, how do we start depends a lot about what situation a person is in at that moment, because it could be something in business or their health or their life with their relationships or whatnot. But I would say the biggest thing that we do, that I try to help people with, is to have hope that just because yesterday was a certain way doesn't mean tomorrow has to be, and that we do have a lot of say of what happens in our life, that we're not victims to anything anymore. The buck stops here. And so I become a partner with them. I become their cheerleader. And I really try to help inspire those to believe in their dreams, believe that we can find out what the patterns are that are keeping them stuck, that everything can change, that all things are possible, that everything can work for good. And I do infuse a lot of spirituality in it. And that's why when I work with people, we always have a session first, a complimentary session, because they need to know I come from a very spiritual place first. And so, you've got to know that God wants you to have the best life that you want for yourself. And that, we have to do the work to get that. It's free will. It's why we're here. And so that, when people understand, wow, just because my life was crappy back then doesn't mean it has to be tomorrow. That's like an eye opener for most people. And just, to believe again in the process of life, to believe that all of those things that we thought were bad, that we can gain wisdom from each circumstance, that we can have a deeper, the ones, us, the people that have been through hell, we have a lot more heaven to reach, because we have a lot more wisdom, as a matter of fact, and so many different silver linings that have happened if we choose to look at it that way. If we choose to go, if I had not been an abused child, I would never have been the most tolerant, patient, understanding mother, where all the kids in the neighborhood call me mom, where they love to be at my house, even sometimes when I'm not so excited about it. I come home to a house of teenagers, I'm always glad that they're here. But would I have turned out this way? Would I be the fiance to my future husband had I not been in relationships where I was not valued, where he values me so much, and I have so much love and appreciation for that? So, everything in life pushes us on our path. And that's the biggest thing that I want to tell people, is that don't give up your hope that you can have the life you want.
I love that as you went through that, the words were hope, faith, belief,
Yes.
inspiration. And I
Yes.
think a year ago, I would have said, well, hope and inspiration and belief aren't going to fix my problem.
No, that's true.
But I mean, that's where it starts. You have to have that intention in mind, and that again goes back to how our minds work. We're
Exactly.
problem solving, goal accomplishing machines, and if we set our intention to say, I don't know how I'm going to get there, I don't know what it looks like, but I hope and desire and believe and have faith that I can be happy and successful and fulfilled, that really is a legitimate thing to work towards.
Well, and it's really the most important thing of all. I mean, honestly, we can achieve so many wonderful things, but yet be miserable on the inside. So it's really important. And the most important part of life, I believe, like I said earlier, is that self-realization and that knowingness that really and this is a little spiritual, and I hope this is okay for you, but that we are an energy, we're a soul, live in a physical incarnation and a human body, experiencing all that life has to offer us. And so, when we come from a place like that, then there's less judgment on the experiences we've had in life. We can look at it without so much anger and bitterness and judgment, even in our business life. And we can maybe be more understanding to our colleagues and our coworkers and our employees and, potential business partners, because we are just people on this journey called life. And everybody comes with their own set of patterns and beliefs and things that have happened to them in their life. And I think most importantly, we can treat each other with more compassion, and you can still be successful in business with that.
Yeah, you speak to this so effectively. I love that we had the chance
Oh,
to
thank
connect.
you.
So
Oh, I'm so glad.
do we stick with awareness and hope a little bit? Do we move to the healing, or do you want to talk about the intentional design? What do you look for? What's on your where are you being pulled?
You shoot. You tell me what your listeners are going to want, and then we'll go there.
Okay, so before we started, you were talking. Let's go to the intentional designs. You talked about
Okay.
kind of creating intentionally the outcome that you wanted. And so
Yes.
to me, this goes, one of the themes that's kind of been on my mind lately is this idea that when we're in this period of struggle, we're unconsciously manifesting what we don't want.
Yes.
Just because it's what we're used to and it's because it's what we know and we know how to create it. So we're just creating it
Yes.
over and over and over again. So
Right.
then we get to a point where we can start taking control of that. We build our awareness, we have our hope and desire and intent to heal, we go through some
Yes.
healing and we start getting better
Yes.
results, and then now the
Yes.
next step appears to be now intentionally utilizing our resources to create what we want.
Yeah, and what happens is during the process, you're not so blinded by things. You have a stronger intuitive ability to be able to foresee some things. You're like, wait a minute, this seems like it did before. And so we can change our decision making process. This is generalization. I mean, we can talk specifics, but I believe what happens is that we have a better understanding, we have a better connection to ourselves, and we can, not to say you won't have those times that the same thing doesn't trigger you and you experience some of the same things again, but you'll find that they're lesser, they affect you to a smaller degree. You're able to pull yourself back to your center the way you really are meant to be faster. I can only use myself as a great example. I was very embittered with my ex-husband. We went through a 10-year divorce. I can't go into particulars of what happened because it involves my children and legal things and all of that, so I won't bore you with all of the horrific details. However, it's going to make a great Lifetime television for women movie one of these days. But I would get, I live in the same small town, and, I would hear things about him, and it would send me down that pit of despair of I was the victim, the unfairness of it all, the bitterness, the anger, and then I would have physical manifestations, and I would just go down this dark road. And after I started realizing the triggers, and I said, well, the trigger could be the nail lady saying, have you heard such and such is going on over there or whatever? And it would set me up, and my brain would keep wanting me to do this whole realm of patterning over and over again, because it had been 10 years. It's 15 years now, but I kept doing the same thing to myself. And I finally said, wait a minute, this isn't good for me. And my mentor taught me to write my triggers down, know what they are. And in that nanosecond, make the decision. Do I want to respond like I always did? Or what would my ideal response be? My ideal response would be utter freedom, peace, hope that he has his great life. and that there'd be no attachment whatsoever. And over time, I kept doing this exercise, and it happened so fast. I can't even tell you. Even now, I can get triggered, and it just doesn't affect my life anymore. So that was the big crux of my life, was getting past that. But it could be in business. You can use the same tools when you have a coworker that's just irritating the shit out of you. You're like, okay, this person irritates me every time they do this. This is how it affects me. And who wants to feel irritated, right? Because then we project that outwards to others, and that's not our highest, best self expression of our life. And so what your ideal thing would be is to be free from that irritation. And so when you start telling yourself, I want my response to be this, and you really work towards that, that's the painful part. Eventually it'll just become natural, because you'll have set a new neuronal pathway in your brain.
And this is a process, because
Yeah.
initially, when we're kind of oblivious to all this even going on,
Yeah.
those same triggers are there. We're just
Yeah.
being activated and going on autopilot without ever taking a moment to catch ourselves.
That's exactly right, Mike. That's the hardest part of all. That's the only way to create big change in your mind, is to analyze your thoughts down to the nanosecond. Now, I know it's exhausting to think of this, but I'm talking about those specific situations. I'm talking about the patterns that keep you stuck in some kind of negative, the mind patterns that keep you stuck in something that you want to change. That is this work I'm talking about here.
And the tool that we have here that's incredibly powerful, that used to be working against us, is our emotion.
Yes.
Once we can learn to use our emotion as a tool to get the results that we want, that's the thing that triggers us to being activated. As soon as we recognize, oh, I'm getting upset about something, or I'm feeling a lot of anxiety, or I feel a lot of physical sensation, that's the sign that there's something going on that I need to be paying attention to right now, right?
Oh, exactly right. For business, it could be maybe you have fear and anxiety about giving some kind of presentation. Maybe you have to change that pattern. Maybe you have a fear of making sales calls. You have to write down what your fears are. What are you afraid of? Is it is it a rejection issue that you've got? Is it a self-esteem thing that you're just, are you afraid of speaking? I mean, it's endless what the possibilities are that we can nitpick down to, but the process is still the same. And when you start applying it and you see the results, and the result is exactly right on, is how you feel. The result is in your feelings.
And it could,
and I mean, and you're your own best barometer on that.
and it could come from either direction. It could come from the fear
Yes.
side. It could come from anger. It could come from shame. It could come from feeling overly aggressive. It could come in a lot of different forms. And if we're not paying attention to that, then we're going to just continue to be a victim to it. But once we can learn what it's,
Yes.
and this is, I mean, we know this, right? It's intuition.
Yes.
It's our gut feeling
Yes.
in business. This is
Yes.
the most powerful tool that we have. And
Right.
I love, especially as I get better at this, seeing how powerful a tool that is. I mean, it's really pretty incredible the way we're designed, built, made, however we got here. This is exactly what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to be unhappy, miserable, dragging around.
Yeah, for some reason, we just set ourselves up to be the great overcomers, right? Where we have to just, the more we overcome. I mean, right now I'm ready. I've talked to the universe, and I've said, my gosh, can you believe how many mountaintops and valleys I've gone through in my life? Good Lord. I'm ready for ecstasy, and maybe a little less ecstasy. I don't need the big painful lessons anymore. Not that life isn't going to have some hurts in it, because that's unrealistic to think about. But when you finally come to this place of this inner peace and this joy, and knowing that all is going to be well, no matter what your surroundings look like, no matter what your bank account says, no matter what is happening in your business life or at home, when you know that all is well, then you'll be at peace no matter what's around you.
So what's the most common thing that you see come up with your clients in terms of like a stumbling block for this, that like, man, if I could just solve this one problem for everybody, my job would be so much easier?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest stumbling block is that they see the power in this work right away, and they make really great changes, and they understand themselves in such a deeper way like they never have before, and they can look back over their life and go, now I understand why I made certain choices and why I was in different situations. But there's always, we're going to be challenged, and so I think some people think, well, I'm never going to be challenged again once I understand this, but that's not true. That's when the work is even more reiterated in your life, and you have the opportunity to apply what you've really learned, because we are going to still, I don't like to use the word test, because I don't think that we go through life being tested all the time. It just feels that way. You're going to have a challenge that, your old patterns may want to rear its ugly head, and you're going to have to fight that off with what now, what that is and what you want to be differently. And so there's that feeling of, wait a minute, why is this happening to me? Because I already did all this work. Well, because it's life, and we go through things, but it's how you handle it that matters now.
Yeah, that really hits home, because between my wife and I, our favorite joke is for me to say, "Oh no, I'm fixed now. It's okay. Now, now everything's
Yeah.
fine from here on out."
Right. Oh, I'm never gonna have I'm never gonna fall back to any of my old ways. And you may not. People may not, but you may be tested to.
Yeah,
You may have to work hard again for a bit until you get through that crisis time. And so that's probably the biggest I don't even want to say problem, but I would say the biggest hiccup in this whole process is that it's not over
thinking we're
just
done
because
when
you
we're
went
not.
through the work. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I saw a
Exactly.
quote. I should just put it on my wall. It just talks about how, with respect to letting go, there's always something to let go of, and it always hurts.
Yes, and and a lot of it so much is our story around. It's not so much an event that happens or a circumstance or a situation, but it's our story that we wrap around it that makes it so big. So if someone was maybe insubordinate at work, or disrespectful or whatever, and we make it this huge thing when really it wasn't that big of a deal. A lot of the times it's our stories that wrap around a situation that make it bigger than it is as well.
So it's always in the story. It's the problem is never the problem. It's that we don't know how to think about it, or the other stuff that we make up about it. I think that
And it
circumstance, all of
triggers
them.
some of those same things we're talking about. So it feels so much worse than it really is, right? Because it's a reminder of some other wound that happened to us along the way that we need to recognize. Once we shine the light of awareness on things, it's amazing how fast they dissipate. I mean, honest to God, once you're aware, you have this conscious awareness of something, and you have your eyes open. And, that's always been my biggest prayer, not for riches, not for power, not even for my own healing with my autoimmune disease. I've always prayed for wisdom and me to have the eyes of God so I could see things clearly. And I think that's a great prayer for all of us, because we would have a lot less hurt in our lives if we could see things as they really are, not warping it with our own eyeglasses of perception.
Which I mean, it almost feels kind of counterintuitive with respect to letting go of the pain, but it's the difference between holding onto it as tight as you can, and a little bit leaks out over 30 or 40 years, and then just letting go of it all at once and not having to hold on to it anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's also like for you and I, who both experienced child abuse, right? I mean, that's your story as well, Mike,
Yeah.
that you experienced that as well. For years, I just thought my whole life it was affected. I made a lot of choices because of my experience growing up like that. And now I can actually talk about it and look at it, and I don't have the pain associated with it. And that, when you get to that point that you can talk about something that was very horrendous and that maimed you, or you believed it did. Actually, now I know it empowered me. But, for many years of my life, the first half of my life, I just thought that I was something that was always wrong with me, that people could see something was wrong with me, that I was less than everybody else because whose mother doesn't love them. And, it affected how I thought people saw me. And now I can see that that was my own belief system. Nobody was thinking I was less than anybody else. And once they hear my story, they think quite differently. But, I can actually speak of these things. And it's a great gift because I can relate to so many other people that have had similar stories in their life and how it set them up for different patterns that, has affected them, and they're ready to get out of it and make changes. Well, I understand. And I can talk about it and it doesn't charge anymore. And that's when that's part of the old story, but it's not part of your new story.
Yeah, my story, I mean, it's obviously not evolving because it's still in the past, but it's still becoming clear
Yeah.
to me. It's very much
Yeah.
a journey that I'm still going through, kind of in the middle of it. Some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't make sense, but I'm far enough in that I'm 100% on the same page. Everything we've talked about today.
And we're just a work in progress. And, I'll have different viewpoints about it as I grow. And, we never stop learning, even in the next life, we will keep growing, evolving, and learning. And so when we can look at it that way, it's less painful.
Yeah.
It's less painful.
So you started to tell me before we started recording about your next project. What do you got coming up?
I've helped women through a lot of trauma, and recently through bad divorce trauma. And now I'm really looking forward. I want to help people find their mate, as I just newly have become engaged. I really want to help those who have lost their hope and their dream that they can have that romantic partner and that life partner that you can build a life together in a very healthy, with common goals and connection and communication. I'm in such a beautiful relationship, and I want that for other people. And it seems that I always end up helping women through their relationships. And this has been happening since I was a teenager. I mean, it's just been a common theme in my life. So I've learned so much about it from teachers and classes and certifications and through my own experience. I would love to help restore men and women their hope that they can, even after having some bad divorces or breakups and people lose their hope and become embittered, that they can release that and have hope that they can build a life with someone.
So
A beautiful life.
what's kind of like the central thing here? I thought when we talked about it before, it was that intentional design element, or is it just the mechanics of a relationship, or like what are we looking at here?
Well, it'll encompass a lot of things. It'll be probably a 2 or 3 month course. It'll be a teleseminar. I'll come out with a webinar first, hopefully in a few weeks. But it will be, obviously we'll have to understand what got you here. We'll have to understand the broken relationships. You'll have to do some self inventory on your love life and the relationships and why they didn't work out and who you've picked and why and all of that. So we obviously go back to the beginning, to our initial relationships, because that's where it all starts, is at the beginning, and work through that, and then how to magnetize, release those wounds and then magnetize a partner that will be better suited for you.
Yeah,
I really would love to do that for people. I would love to help people with that. That's the greatest gift of all, is to, help people find love.
and whether it's at home or at work, it's always about relationships.
Yes.
If
Yes.
the problem that we think we have really is just a technical problem or a procedural problem or a training problem, then
Yes.
we get those resources and we solve it and we move on. It doesn't hold us back.
Exactly.
But if we're
Exactly.
stuck on it, it's absolutely something that we believe or something about our relationships. So I love it.
Oh, good. Thank you. And, eventually I hope to work with people on their soul purpose, because I believe that when you're in alignment with your soul's calling, whatever that is, from basket weaving to, big corporations and everything in between, that's when your life has that sense of fulfillment.
Awesome.
So that's in the works too. I've got a lot of irons in the fire. Pardon me.
So what's the best place for people to connect with you? Overcometrauma.com, TheresaVigarino.com?
Yeah, either one leads you to my website. At Theresa at overcometrauma.com is my email address, and Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm everywhere. I'm easy to find. I'll give you my phone number, 775-450-5789. I'm not scared.
You attract what you expect, right? You expect
Yeah,
good results,
exactly.
you only attract good results.
Oh, and I'm here to serve, and I actually answer my phone.
Awesome. All right. Well, any closing thoughts or comments as we wind down here?
Well, I just want to say thank you for all of you listening and viewing. And if my story has been an inspiration to you, then every step of the way has been worth it. And so don't give up. Know that you can have what you desire and what you dream of, and don't let go of that. It's the most important part of the puzzle.
It's awesome. And I continue to be blown away doing these. This is my now 13th interview. And
Yeah.
every single time I get so much more out of it than I could have expected going in. And this is continues. So I love
Oh,
it.
thank you so much. That's the best reward I could ever receive, is that I could like touch somebody, and even you, Mike. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here with you. I'm excited for the work that you're doing too.
I
You're
love it.
doing great things.
Thank you. And I appreciate that you were able to be here. And as I said before we got started, my intent for this is that somebody who's still kind of like coming into this, who's just getting into that awareness, who's trying to figure out what to do next, just can take some hope, inspiration, belief, or faith out of this
Yes.
to move in
Yes.
the right direction. And I really appreciate you coming to participate with me on that today, Theresa. Can you hang out for just a
Thank you.
second?
Absolutely.
All right. I think we said it all in the interview. Thanks so much to Theresa for joining me today. And until we speak again, be the person you want to be, build the business you want to build, and have the successful life you want to have. And that